I'm really excited, a little bit nervous, but I was always taught like if you're not nervous, you don't really care about it. I just been trying to get better at everything. Really been trying to work my technique, working my progressions and stuff like that. Just kind of getting comfortable with the pace of the game. So I'm just really trying to come back and just be a whole different kind of savage whenever it's time for camp.
Texans swarm, baby. That's Kamari Lasser, Texans' second-round pick, their first pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, and per some, the front-runner to be cornerback number 2. He was catching up with Chancellor Johnson of Channel 2, KPRC. It all kicks off tomorrow. And I'm not going to lie, for the first time in a very long time, I'm actually excited to get up early, to lather up in some sunblock, and to watch the Houston Texans at work tomorrow morning before the show. I can't wait. No sarcasm here. For the first, I think, off-season ever, I'm looking at the Houston Texans as a team that does not have somebody in their way, which is crazy because the Ravens have beaten them twice in the last calendar year. The Kansas City Chiefs are still the Kansas City Chiefs. But I think during the Deshaun Watson era, going into the 2018 season, I was still always a little dubious, mainly because, well, okay, last year, Watson had some good moments in 2017, but in 2018, are they going to be able to do better than they were 3-4? They had a good 2018 season, but they started off 0-3. I always thought that teams like the Patriots were a class above them. They lost that first game of the year, and they did win 9 in a row, but going into that year, I wasn't 100% sure. This year, I feel so good about the team, but as you do this week, especially right after an all-star game where Yordan Alvarez had a 5-pitch walk and Texas culture was appropriated by Fox and by Major League Baseball in a rather demeaning and offensive way, I feel like I've got to put out my 5 biggest questions for the Houston Texans entering training camp. We'll go in reverse order, 5 through 1. Number 5, who among Houston Texans media will be the biggest dork when it comes to keeping statistics of guys practicing against each other in shorts? Who's going to be the dork of all dorks? I'm not asking who's going to complain about a lack of air conditioning. That's John McClain. I'm not going to say anything like that. I'm just asking who's going to be the reporter that unironically keeps very detailed statistics. And it's going to be my guy, DJ Benim. I can't wait. I know he's not listening right now. We're going to have him on a bunch this football season. I can't wait. But lock it up. No one will keep better stats of men throwing to other men in shorts than DJ Benim. Because DJ and I, we're flag football legends, okay? We appreciate men throwing to other men in shorts. So that's my 5th biggest question for the Houston Texans entering training camp. Paul, that wasn't serious. So these are my biggest questions. Number 4, this is actually a serious one. Will the offensive line come out of this year's camp, A, healthy, and B, solidified? Feels like every single year, the Houston Texans have a lot of shuffling that goes on the offensive line. It's why Titus Howard always ends up playing interior offensive lineman, despite being someone who has on his Twitter profile, right tackle only. But going into training camp, Laramie Tunsil should be ready to go. You would hope Titus Howard, who had the surgery last year, is going to be ready to go. Shaq Mason at right guard. Left guard, center. You're not 100% sure what's going to happen. Is Kenyon Green, who was a first-round pick a couple of years ago, is he actually going to play? At center, is Juice Scruggs, your second-round pick, going to be the guy? Or any of the players who's filled in there last year going to be the guy? I don't really care as long as it's not a musical chair deal like it was last year. partly due to injuries, which started off this time of year, but also because you had some guys that I think really didn't live up to what they were billed as. And I'm specifically talking about Kenyon Green, who obviously got injured in that preseason game against the Saints, but it didn't really feel like things were progressing in the right direction before that. Is he 100% healthy this time? I mean, this is the last chance for him. So that's my fourth biggest question for the Houston Texans entering training camp, which kicks off tomorrow. Is the offensive line going to be able to get out of camp healthy and solidified? Is there going to be a unit that actually gets to mesh together, gel together? There will be injuries over the course of the year, but they can't possibly be any worse on that front than they were last year, right? They were so unlucky. Question number 3. Who will C.J. Stroud have the most chemistry with at wide receiver? And this is for all the fantasy footballers out there. Who should I draft in my fantasy league? I mean, I'm a PPR league, but we also have bonuses for guys who get a lot of yards, especially for guys who get 20-plus yard plays. What should I do? I mean, there's some of you out there. I understand it. Fantasy football is life for some. Flag football is life for others. Stroud relied on Nico Collins the most at the end of last year by necessity. Collins has the ability to stretch the field. Collins is extremely fast, straight line speed-wise, but also has the ability to juke people after the catch, run people over after the catch. He was towards the tops of the league in terms of yards after catch. He is now, after a year developing chemistry with C.J. Stroud, a full season, looking like a guy who could be in the conversation for top 20 wide receivers in the NFL. Statistically, last year, he was top 10 in the majority of them. Is he going to be able to keep that up? Is C.J. Stroud going to look at him the same way he looked at him last year? Because Tank Dell is going to be back, and as undersized as Tank Dell might be, Dell and Stroud clearly have a Vulcan mind meld of some sort, a la Russell Wilson and Tyler Lockett when plays break down. For those who don't know, when I was up in Seattle, if you saw Russell Wilson extending a play, you knew he was going to go to Tyler Lockett eventually. And you knew that Lockett was going to come down with the football. And given Lockett's size, given Tank Dell's size, smaller than Lockett, I feel like this is a pretty good comparison to make between the two. So you've already got established relationships. Stroud likes those guys a lot. He likes Dalton Schultz. But how is Stephon Diggs going to fit into all of this? Is he going to get annoyed if he doesn't get the ball thrown his way? He can say he won't get annoyed for now. But look, receivers get open, and sometimes they don't have the ball thrown their way. And now you got two other receivers that are fighting for touches. I don't think it really matters ultimately from a wide receiver perspective when it comes to the wins and losses for this team, who has the most. But I am very curious to see who ends up being Stroud's go-to guy. The good news is you got that many good receivers. That should never be the kind of problem that hurts you. It just hurts the egos of the guys who aren't getting the ball. Number 2, my top 5 questions for the Houston Texans entering training camp, which kicks off tomorrow. After Derek Stingley, who is a starter in the secondary? I really don't know. You would think that at safety, it's Jimmy Ward, Jalen Petrie, right? Jalen Petrie's going into his 3rd year. Jimmy Ward's played in a D'Amico Ryans defense for a little bit. Kalen Bullock is a 3rd-round rookie out of USC. Really bad at taking angles to the ball in college at USC. So you probably don't want to have somebody out there that's maybe more suspect at tackling than Petrie was last year. But while those two are the front runner at safety, I feel like you could do better. I talked about this in the first hour of the show. I feel like if you're the Texans, you should be picking up the phone with your $20 million in cap space and wondering if you can get in Quandre Diggs or Justin Simmons to play safety. I don't know that either of those two are going to be your starting guy going into the year. There's still enough time left where you would think that some veteran is, at the very least, going to get a phone call. Maybe not, though. Maybe they have complete confidence in those two. After that, I have no idea who the number 2 corner is going to be. You heard coming into the segment, Kamari Lasser talking about how he wants to be a savage out there, but he's also a little bit nervous going into Texans training camp. He is the front runner for the number 2 corner spot right now, and he's a rookie 2nd-round pick that a lot of people projected to be a nickel corner. What does that mean? Good question. I don't know. It's, I think, largely due to his size, maybe because he wasn't showing that straight line speed, but there were some teams that traded up to get in front of the Houston Texans to draft cornerbacks, Cooper DeJean, among others, in this year's draft. Like the Texans were just sitting there and a couple teams swooped up in front of them and they took cornerbacks. Was Kamari Lasser the first guy on the Texans board? Whatever the case, he's ahead of C.J. Henderson and ahead of Jeffrey Okudah, 2 former top 10 picks from 2020, who the Texans signed in the offseason. But after Derek Stingley, who is a starter in the Texans secondary? That's my second biggest question. And my first question, the number one question about the Houston Texans entering training camp, which kicks off tomorrow, who is going to be the first media member who zags and thinks that they're not going to be good? Who's going to do it? The last person who merely suggested they should stop talking as much as they do, Jason Braddock, literally quit the industry. Was it because y'all came back at him? He said it was because he felt like he lost his fastball. I don't know. I felt like the article he wrote was actually rather engaging and made some good points. Who is going to be the first person to zag against the Houston Texans in local media? I want to know. Someone's going to do it. Is it going to be Joe George? I don't know if it's going to be Joe George. Joe's the one that's saying that C.J. Stroud's going to win a Super Bowl on his rookie contract. We'll see. But he seems rather bullish about the team going in. I could do it. I could just do it to annoy other local media members, to troll them a little bit. Should I put on my Skip Bayless hat? My Skip Bayless skin mask? I mean, I'm jacked like Skip Bayless, kind of, you know? So, I mean, like, I can pull it off. I just need to get one of those Mission Impossible masks, put it on my head, and just spout out all of the things that will troll everybody. Maybe that's the key to ratings here. Just completely zagging when everyone is buying into the Houston Texans hype. Who's going to be the first? I could do it, but am I paid Skip Bayless money? I don't know.